both sides of the conversation family. We welcome you to this virtual space crafted especially for you. My name is Jada Curry, and I'm both sides of the conversation's marketing director and graphics design specialist. I want to take some time to ground us all as a community into this space we are about to open up in, so let's go through our community standards. Both sides of the conversation is providing a safe and honest space for open conversation, so we ask that you all be respectful of that. We also ask that you be respectful of each panelist, host, and participant. We do encourage healthy debates and conversations. Don't personalize anything with anyone. This includes name-calling, bullying, trolling, or shaming. This will not be allowed or tolerated. Your perspective is yours. It is not a prescription. You do not have to agree, but show respect. These community standards apply to all of our live shows and any virtual spaces that we hold on social media, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We want to make sure that we are caring for each other as a community. This is our priority in all of our endeavors as both sides of the conversation. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's show and continue to stay in touch with us via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or all of them. All right, thank you for listening and see you soon.
Welcome everyone to Both Sides of the Conversation Live. We meet here virtually every Sunday at 2 p.m. I am your co-host, Brittany Doyle, and I would like to introduce you to our executive director and other co-host, Don Henry.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are here today on Sunday to have a powerful conversation about community violence. We have some amazing panelists that's going to come on and talk about some of the resources, some of the things that are being put in place to help curb some of this violence in our community. As we all know, here in the Bay Area, it's been a violent weekend over this Bay Area and across this country, but especially in San Francisco and Oakland as well. So this is an important time to have this important conversation. So we're going to be looking forward to getting started with today's conversation very shortly. Want to go through a couple of announcements and talk about some of the things that's been going on in the community. And before I go there, first, I just want to say thank you to all of the community who just been pouring out love to me and my family and just supporting us in this time of grieving. As you all know, this past week, my mom passed away, and I've been just trying to keep my head up, keep pushing forward, because there's so much work and things that we have to continue to do with the community. I know she wanted me to keep going and not lay down and stay down. So thank you for all the community love, support, phone calls, and everybody just reaching out, uplifting me, keeping me motivated and going to continue to do this work. So this weekend, we had a number of community events that were going on to impact the community. I was able to get out to a number of those events. We had the Bayview Community Town Hall talking about some of the housing issues and concerns that our residents are dealing with in the Bayview. So I was out there with Sister Maika from the Heart, the API, Feline Dance Group, Us for Us, a number of community organizations came out to support in solidarity about some of the housing issues that are going on with our people here in San Francisco. So next Sunday, we're going to have a powerful conversation about that. We have some important people that's going to come on and just talk about some of that stuff, as this housing issue is just impacting us, not only here in the Bay Area, but across this country. So just wanted to give a shout out to that. They had the police and APR team up. They gave out bikes this weekend at 155 Jenny Street. A number of the community, young people were able to get bikes. So shout out to the SFPD and that collaboration of folks who came together to put on that event. Also, we had a number of events, a couple of block parties and events that were happening across the city. So just nice to see the community out and about doing things to impact the community. And then with that being said, you know, it's Latino History Month. And the recognition, they had the lowriders and the mayor was out there in the mission at the Mission Cultural Center. A lot of work going on. Nice to see all of the cars in the community out there. So it was a great event. And it's just important to see our communities out there. a number of the announcements that we wanted to get out today to community. There's some road announcements that definitely impacts us. The FDA panel has endorsed the COVID-19 booster shot, and they're asking elder Americans widespread to take this booster shot. There are some other entities that are pushing back, but they're saying people that are 65 and older is at risk in that population. So there is a booster shot that's going to be coming out. Also, the president, Joe Biden, signed an executive order to add the measles to the quarantinable disease list. And, I got a lot of concerns about that, but we'll talk about that later. But now they're saying that the measles is something that they're considering to put on as a federal quarantine due to the U.S. bond with the Afghan refugees. So I guess they're starting to see a number of diagnoses or people exposed. So they're saying to protect public health safety, they want to make sure that the measles is put on that list. So more things coming down as we start continue. We'll find out more and get it out to community. Also, the United Nations Global Watch have put out a notice to the public that they are seeing a planet temperature increase of a 2.7 Celsius, which in our Fahrenheit terms is a 36-degree increase in temperature, with global warming being one of the top things that scientists are concerned over the next 20 to 25 years. And they saying if we don't, as humans on this planet, reduce our emissions, greenhouse gases, and some of the things that we use day to day that pollutes the ozone, we will be having some real issues here with flooding, tornadoes, and some of the things we've been seeing on the news, how the weather has just been changing us. But they're saying places like San Francisco that average is about 67 degrees in temperature would see a 36-degree increase, and that will just bring on some temperatures that we're not ready for in San Francisco. A lot of homes and businesses don't have air conditioning because we are a mild temperature part of the country. But with this impact of climate change, they say San Francisco will be hit as one of those cities that could be reaching into the 80s on a normal base. So very important stuff. As community, we have to do our part to reduce emissions and make sure that we're trying to help save this planet that we live on. Also, information coming out, there was digital records from the 19th century. They are giving Black families a glimpse of their ancestry. Millions of the Freedom Bureau records have become newly available, helping to break down the historic barriers for Black families. We'll get that information out to the community, how to connect and find out pretty cool stuff, to kind of see some of the historic things. As we know in our culture, we are always looking at historic things and how to connect our ancestry. So this is going to be something cool, and I hope the African American Culture Center, we've been talking to them to put something together so people can find their roots. So very important stuff right there. With that being said, the Fillmore Square job training, that faith-based culinary training workforce, that cohort is going to be starting soon. We've been putting that information out for community. Please make sure that you go to info@fillmoresquare.org and reach out to Brother Tyrone. If you have some young people or some people who want to get into the cooking industry, please reach out to them. Looks like it's going to be a phenomenal cohort of young people and people trying to do culinary. So check that out. The Be Magic Family Day for Residents, again, is every day from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And they have extended the hours from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Thursday. Please reach out to Be Magic if you want to be a part of that. If you want to find out if you're a baby resident, please contact Be Magic to get that updated information. The Baby Hunter Point Parks are in collaboration with the Park RX. They're going to host a zero-waste gardening shop located at Heron Park at the Eco Center at 32 Jennings Street. Please reach out to them if you would like to be a part of it. We'll get that information on the street. Next Saturday, the 25th, we're going to have another 3rd Street Humbre Block Party with the San Francisco African American Culture Center at Cafe Envy, located on Lane in Yosemite. We'll put that information out as well for community. Also, they're going to have another Hunters Point Circus Day with the Circus Bella at the 155 Jenny Streets on October the 3rd from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Please contact info@nowhunterspoint.org, and we'll put the information up there on the screen. That should be a great event for our young people. Also, we're having a Community Appreciation Day this Thursday, the 23rd, in front of City Hall, Wealth and Disparities, in the Mega Black, SF Mega Black. So we continue to push that information out. I know some people were seeing the flyers and was asking. We're going to continue to keep pushing that information out. That is this Thursday at 12 p.m. So please contact info at Mega Black, Wealth and Disparities, and we'll continue to push that information out to the community as well. We're going to have a community cleanup on Saturday, October the 16th, from 10 to noon, and they're going to have lunch provided by Big H Barbecue, and everybody's going to be meeting at 4101 3rd Street in San Francisco. So looking forward to seeing the community out there for that event. The San Francisco Art Commission is looking to expand their pool of grants. They're looking for culture ambassadors here in the city. Please, the deadline is on Monday at noon. Please go on to the San Francisco Arts Commission and apply if you feel like you could be a part of that and you want to be a community culture ambassador. Please go to the San Francisco Arts Commission and sign up under the community art ambassadors. We got a couple of grant information and scholarships going up. The Willie Mays scholarships for community for our young people are due by October 7th. If you have a young person that you would like to get a part of this $20,000 scholarship with the San Francisco Giants Community Fund, please reach out to the Junior Giants at sfgiants.com. We'll get that information up to the community. We've already been putting it on our social media, but the deadline is coming up. We want to make sure that all of our young people get an opportunity for those scholarships. And then there's a couple of job opportunities that's opening. The Department of Emergency Management has a couple of opportunities for employment. Please go to the San Francisco Human Resources website if you're interested in those jobs. With that being said, the business for both sides of the conversation, this Tuesday we'll have another segment of our hidden gems where we will continue to highlight our Black and brown businesses as well as community leaders that are going to that positively impact our community. And then next Thursday, we will have an educational presentation from Shawana Sherman at the San Francisco Library to update community with information. So I hope you all will be available for that. And then we're going to have next Sunday our housing management issue in San Francisco that we're going to be talking about. It's very important conversation. I just think community, we need to be a part of it. So it'll be a great conversation. And then October 3rd, we'll be having a conversation about drug abuse. We had a reentry event that we was a part of at the Archdiocese this past Friday. Phenomenal folks that's going to be coming on to talk about some of the harm reduction program, some of the things that they would like to see to fix some of the drug use and some of the programming that happens for people who are affected by substance abuse. As you all know, not only here in San Francisco, but across this country, we have been impacted by this fentanyl that has been taking the lives of so many people who use and different things of that nature. And we want to advocate and promote, the right things for people. But again, it's happening and we just want to do it. And then on 10/10, we're going to be doing a hybrid model show. We're going to be talking about breast cancer awareness, but I'll be out because I've been invited to Dr. Scott event. So we'll be mobile on that Sunday, but we're going to be talking about breast cancer awareness. So with that information, I am now going to close my mouth and pass it over to Ms. Brittany so that we could go ahead and introduce today's panelists and get today's conversation going.
All right, thank you. There's a lot of good stuff going on in the city right now. So for our theme today, for the show topic, we're going to be talking about community violence. And as you know, Black and brown communities have experienced generations of community violence. Gun violence has taken the lives of so many countless young kings and queens. Many have fallen victims of untimely deaths, and many of the survivors are reminded of the sting of deaths of loved ones that are taken too soon. And so we sit here and we ask ourselves, what is the root cause of community violence, especially here in San Francisco, because we're so unique? And what do our community leaders plan to do to combat the issues plaguing our communities? And so what the problem is, historically, communities that are impoverished have high rates of unemployment, lack access to basic resources, and these inequalities have historically been linked to high rates of crime. In addition, communities that are marginalized by inequalities also suffer from disparate treatments based on race, which can lead to the use of exclusionary practices in educational institutions and in the criminal justice system. And so when we talk about what solutions have taken place here in San Francisco, we look back to 2019, where the San Francisco Police Department and city activists held a summit to get an understanding about the root cause of the community violence and provide some sort of solution that has a comprehensive, holistic approach. In June 2020, our Mayor London Breed and Supervisor Shaman Walton announced that they will redirect funds from the police department and reallocate this money to the African American communities to address the over-policing in the communities and address the issues on health, housing, and economic disparities. San Francisco officials approved the reallocation of $3.75 million from the city's police funds and placed it into financial support for African American businesses and entrepreneurs. In May 2021, our mayor announced the funding of local organizations that will address social issues that plague the community. She also announced the city's Dreamkeeper initiative and reinvested $120 million from the police budget to support the community. In addition, San Francisco launched the Dreamkeeper Fellowship Pilot Program, which we'll be talking about today. And this program pays at-risk participants $300 per month to refrain from activities that can lead to gun violence. And as you all know, this has been talked about nationwide. It even made TMZ for a lot of people that follow that network. And you know that when it's on TMZ, you know it's a big deal. But we have a great show lined up for us today. We'll be talking to several people about this Dreamkeepers initiative. But I first want to bring to the table. Oh, sorry, I'm bringing it down. So we have three people that we'll be talking to today. And so the first person that I would like to bring to the table is Dr. Cheryl Davis. And she will introduce herself. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Cheryl Davis.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I am excited to be here. Usually I listen in and then I forget that you're not on Facebook Live where I can just get you to respond to me immediately. So thanks for having me. I am Cheryl Davis, the director of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, have been doing work in San Francisco for a couple decades now, and really came to this work from being an educator and working in schools and working in community. Came to know Mayor Breed through that work in community, just a commitment to make those changes. And so currently the director of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, started my career as a teacher, and then from there started volunteering at spaces like the African American Art and Culture Complex and Ella Hill Hutch Community Center, and just became drawn to providing resources and support and adjusting some of the challenges that we face in community. So really grateful to be here today to share a little bit about what we're working on now, how we're moving forward, and hopefully can have a little conversation with you all as we move forward and have this conversation. So I'll start with just by way of background on me and as a way to talk about coming to this journey around public safety, community violence. As I mentioned, I started as a teacher in private school, started my summers volunteering in community, and from there ended up working as a legislative aide for District 5 office, and then from there had the opportunity to work with Jeff Adachi. And so anyone who is familiar knows Jeff Adachi was the public defender for San Francisco, was committed to social justice, and I would say started a lot of programs in the public defender's office that, you know, in Jeff's words, were really meant to put him out of business, right? To not make so that we didn't have a need for public defenders, but that we were doing so much work on the front end, so much work around prevention, and really focusing on community. And I was fortunate to be the founding director for Mo Magic, worked to build out Mo Magic in the Western Addition, Fillmore Western Addition, focused on bringing nonprofits together, really focused on how do we serve young people and their families with a real nod towards violence prevention. So a lot of the work that I've done over the years with Mayor Breed has been focused on how do we center community, how do we center community voices. When Mo Magic first started, we had high incidence of violence and shootings during the summer in the Western Addition. And after that, we started having groups work together, being very intentional, being on the ground, engaging with young folks, and saw that shift. So the mayor is really committed to the power of community, but also the power of, as you mentioned, Brittany, getting to community need, understanding the comprehensive needs of folks and not trying to isolate it to only being focused on after someone gets in trouble, but really trying to do more to prevent that. And so Mo Magic was really focused on that. From Mo Magic, I was able to go over to Ellie Hill Hutch Community Center. We were able to build out what is now Magic Zone Ellie Hill Hutch programming over there. And again, the key to that is community, really centering it into community, because we collectively have the answers, right? And a lot of folks with lived experience or that have been impacted by it are the folks that we should be centering. And so again, from Mo Magic to Magic Zone to Ellie Hill Hutch, was able to really pause and force the systems to say, what do we need to hear from community? How do we respond and move that work forward? And have been very excited about the current leadership at Ellie Hill Hutch Community Center, right? Like really making sure that folks who grew up in the community, folks who have lived experience with like changing their lives and changing outcomes, like, the director, James Spangola, and then the folks that came there when I was there, right? Like the folks that we started with, Rico Hamilton, Rika Chambers, like all of these folks who came in, DeAnthony Jones, have come through that community and have the ability to really help us shift. And I would say from there, going to the Human Rights Commission, going from really being in community, really being able to be community centered and community led, and moving into a space where there's a bureaucracy, right? Where we're focused on the systems and the policies and having to move forward in the way that it's already done, right? And that we just want to keep doing the same old thing, the status quo, has been, I think in a lot of ways, a challenge, right? Because you are coming in with this lens, you want to push, you want to change, you want to think about like how we do more on the prevention side, but we also want to think about like how we humanize folks, right? That we remember their humanity. And so I would say what prepped me for some of that is I was on the Western Addition Citizens Advisory Committee for Redevelopment Agency before it went away in the Fillmore. And so really was able to see firsthand kind of the conflict and the tension between community-led and policy-driven, right? And how do we do that work? So the last few years has really been, what does some of this look like? I had just before coming to the Human Rights Commission, had just worked with another collaborative to develop and build out Black to the Future, which was how do we again center community voice? How do we build that out with a focus there mainly on children, youth, and their families? And now moving into the Human Rights Commission, John Henry, you've been one of the main ones to be like, what are we funding? Where's the city money going? How are we managing this? What does this look like? And for me, that was a challenge, right? Because it's not in my, people like that's, stay in your, without saying it, but saying like, stay in your lane, right? Like you do your work over there. Don't be asking me what I fund or what I'm supposed to be doing. And don't try to bring us out and hold us accountable to community, because ultimately we grant money. The grantees are accountable to us. We're not accountable to community, but I think that we have to really have a shift. And so we've been spending the last few years, Mayor Breed is, a big advocate for accountability across the board, right? And that just because we think it's successful doesn't mean that community thinks it's successful. And so I think that's been really the challenge here, is because we will say we fund something and we got, and we know it's successful because they gave us a sign-in sheet, and the sign-in sheet had, 50 names on it, right? But does the number of people that come to an event equate to public safety, right? Do we have the right people? Are there the folks that are actually going to be able to go back out and impact folks in the community and get them to make those shifts and those changes? And so we've had over the years, like I wanted to read for you all, like I found this paper here in my office. This is from 1968, a point of acceleration, right? And so they were saying, basically, here we are in San Francisco, we need to do something to advance and support Negroes. This is the language in the report. And then they're like, the program that they wanted to focus on, and a couple of them, the improvement of police conditions, more police, better pay, hiring at the entry level as recommended. And then they go on to talk about the police department already has some of these recommendations, but then it says to increase use of this program, hiring community service officers to increase the number of Negroes in police departments will help to establish needed channels of communications with the Negro community. Will permit the police to perform their community service functions, especially in the minority group neighborhoods, and will also create a number of badly needed jobs for Negro youth, right? So here we are, the language has shifted, right? But the intent in some way is still the same, that we still need to be doing more. Right now we say Black folks instead of Negroes, or we say African Americans, but even 1968, there was a call to do more between police and community, right? But there was also a call to get more Black people into the police department, right? So we're still struggling with those same kind of ideas, those same, that same narrative. Then they had community relations unit, a strengthening of the community relations unit as recommended by the President's Commission on Law Enforcement to include strong neighborhood units and youth involvement in the neighborhoods by highly trained officers. So again, we've had these recommendations. Where are we in terms of advancing them and building them out is kind of the challenge. And then I wanted to share another document that we did actually in preparation for the launch of Black to the Future. We wanted to look at it. It was like, what are all these different reports? And one of the recommendations, can you see that? Is that showing up, recommendations?
Yes. Can you enlarge it just a little bit? The words, I mean, you can see it, it's up. It's just maybe.
Yeah. Let me see. Let's see. Is that getting larger for you there?
Well, it's a little bit more. No.
Let's see if I can get a little bit bigger there. That a little bit better? Can you see that? Is that better?
Can you go up a little bit more? Just enlarge it a little bit more. Maybe you have to go to 125 probably.
Oh,
all right, that's better. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, there we go.
Okay. And then, it's interesting how all this stuff comes full circle because, President Shaman Walton, Mayor Breed allocated the $120 million for Black people. And then, President Walton and I worked together on developing Black to the Future. And one of the things, again, you can see violence in our city from 2001, allocate city funds for a program that addresses the needs of high-risk single fathers. So at least through the Dreamkeeper Initiative, we know that we're going to fund some of that. Implement an information campaign aimed at restoring voting rights for those convicted of criminal offense, right? Publish a brochure for youth on what to do when stopped by police. Institute Youth Achievement Awards. That's something we could totally work on with you, John Henry. That's what you all have been trying to work on, push forward, right? Provide improved after-school programs, implement a citywide mentorship program, right? So there's the work that is happening with, formerly with Ms. Marshall at the school district, which was our citywide tutorial, which is supposed to be focused on mentorship, right? Increase apprenticeships and job training programs, create a public forum for dialogue between the media and community of color, publish a catalog of programs, which is what you've asked for on numerous occasions, around what is the city funding for violence prevention, create a one-stop community outreach center, cultural competency. So like there are all these things that keep coming up over and over and over again. And the question is, have we even done one of those, right? Let alone all of them. And so that's part of what we're hoping to do, what I'm hoping to do with the Dreamkeeper Initiative. And so with some of the requests that you all made over the last year through the pandemic, through our conversations, we started asking departments to tell us what what are you funding that's violence prevention specific, right? So now what we're trying to do is go through and look at, like, is it violence prevention? Is it response? Is it intervention? You know, this is DPH. This is a Department of Adult and Aging Services, the juvenile probation, DCYF, right? Like, there are all these things that now we're like, well, are they talking to each other? How do they inform each other? What does that look like? Who does it touch? What's the impact? And when we look at all of that together, it's millions upon millions of dollars, right? So we're really trying to figure out how we can do a better assessment of what a lot of that is. And then again, drilling down a little bit more on this narrative and, you know, what it is, how are we developing it, what types of violence are we responding to? Because we know here lately, we've got more conversations around the discrimination and things that are happening with regards to hate crimes, right? And that we've seen that and we hear it about specific groups, but that we're not necessarily hitting some of our community violence pieces. And how are we addressing that? So we really wanted to hear from folks, you know, what hate crime, hate incidents, is it violence? What is it that we're talking about? And that we basically have put together, which I'll share in a little bit, but I wanted to see if you had questions or thoughts, you know, even from just what I've kind of shared out here before I even go into kind of where we are on this next bucket. And before we get into the Dreamkeeper Initiative, the Dreamkeeper Fellowship, which that thing, you know, people took a small soundbite from the mayor talking at the Violence Prevention Summit. And then all of a sudden, I can't even tell you, like, the insane emails and phone calls that I was getting where people were threatened. I'm like, this is crazy. You're threatening me with bodily harm because we're trying to, like, stop violence and you don't like the method or the mechanism that we're using. It's just, you know, it's insane, the things that happen and kind of transpire.
No, definitely. I have a number of questions, but for community out there watching, we have Director Dr. Davis on for a short time. If you guys would like to ask questions about some of the Dreamkeeper stuff, this violence prevention, some of the resources that are coming to the community, please use the live chat. If you're watching on our Facebook page, please, we'll try to get some of those questions up, but please go to our YouTube, use the live chat, and we'll get those questions up there for Director Davis, and then you guys could interact, and we'll see if she can answer as many of those questions that she can in that short time. And then we're going to be transitioning to bring up Miss Felicia Jones and David Muhammad here shortly to further the conversation. But I think the first thing, first, before I even start, I just want to say, thank you for your leadership, you, President Walton, and the mayor for what you all are doing. And you're right, I'm very big on accountability. And there's so many things that you all are doing to try to leverage and help support the Black community for sustainability. And my biggest thing for community is where are we at, and it's a lot of time from community standpoint, it's always what the city's doing, what are they doing? But when we talk about community violence, this is a community issue. This is something that every man in the community needs to be having a serious internal conversation or look in the mirror. What am I doing as a Black man in the community to help my young brothers and sisters out to stop some of this community violence, as well as our community organizations? It's too much pushback on what President Walton needs to be doing, and what the human rights need to be doing, what the mayor needs to be doing. And I really want to start shifting the narrative and the conversation for self-accountability, not only for myself, because I'm going to do more and work hard and make sure that I can do more in the community to help our young people when we talk about violence, conflict resolution. But we need the community. Okay, this issue that we're faced is going to take all of us to combat and come together to help offspring some of this violence that's happening. Everybody in the community, we need to reach out to our young people, talk to them, find out what they need, utilize all of our services and community entities. And we need our community entities to be open and available, because a lot of times when there's a lap in service or a lap of resources, it impacts these young people. But the first thing on the list that I saw was the resources going to single fathers at high risk. And I'm glad that's number one on the list. Because again, when we're talking about preventing violence in our community over the years, there have been a lot of resources allocated to support the single mothers in our community. Nothing wrong with the resources being pushed to our single families and mothers. A lot of times the mothers and the queens of our community has held it down and supported. But when we talk about violence and I'm listening on these calls and I'm talking to these organizations, there is not a focused effort on how do we help young Black males, one, who are not in trouble, or the ones who are in trouble, right? And I think with this violence prevention, I think you hit it on the head. What I'm seeing from my assessment and just looking at some of the violence prevention tools and what people are using is more reactive. Everybody's showing up after the situation or after it's escalated, right? And I really want to shift on preventative measures. I want the community to look at how can we work together, reset our thinking, reset these models, and let's get into the preventive interventions, right? Let's catch these kids who are on the corner. And this is why that first one is so important, because a lot of times when it comes to Black males, especially Black and brown males, the only services and support comes through reentry or substance abuse, right? And I'm trying to think of how do we get those young people in the community services and help before they commit the crime, before they get into the gang? How do we shift our thinking about the programming and open up programming for all the kids? Sometimes in our community, if you ain't on probation, if you're not, been in contact with the police, you have no services. And I really want to look at how do we switch those models to find out maybe this kid haven't committed a crime, but the people he's hanging around is influencing him in the wrong way. How do we get better mentorship? How do we get better intervention with the elders of the community at all realms, faith-based, everywhere? How do we get a real interaction and start supporting these young people, especially young fathers, in our community? Because we know money drives a lot of this stuff. And Brittany's opening statements, the financial component is very, very important, because those sometimes when money is short, people tend to do things that typically they might not would have done if they had access to those resources. So that's just what I wanted to hone in, Director Davis, and just kind of get your thoughts about it. And, I always like having conversation with you. And I don't know, community get mad because I say Dr. Davis is a genius. And I'm serious, because the thought process and the way that you really strategically and intentionally put things out is very, very important. And a lot of people, they don't really see it, right? And it's just like, I see it and I'm like, man, y'all just missing it. Some people are missing. I'm like, the intentionality of and strategically how you put things away, especially in our educational realm. I think that's one thing that I always highlight. We definitely have to push education more in our community. So I really appreciate, you always pushing that forward for us.
No, I would say, there's a lot to unpack in there. I would say, hey, Rita. So I would say a couple things, right? Off top, the idea of fathers, right? That was from a 2001 recommendation. That came from something where we talk about it, but we like to go with the narrative that Black dads don't care about their kids. We have to actually shift that narrative too, right? We have to take away the negative connotation, the expectation or the lack of expectations, right? In that regard. And we also have to own the challenges, right? The way that the system has worked against folks, right? In terms of, where we might live, if I add my baby's daddy to the lease, or if I get married and all of that, then some of the things that are helping us barely make it, I may potentially lose. And so that's part of why for this next go round, part of Dreamkeeper Initiative and working with Office of Economic and Workforce Development, as well as with Department of Public Health, we're doing a couple of things. One is guaranteed income, right, for those dads who might be on the child support list, those dads who might want to, have been trying to figure out how to engage and support with their kids, but they don't have the income to be able to do and spend the time with that they want. So that we want to be able to give them some additional resources to be able to support their kids, to go to the museum, which is expensive, to go to, the zoo, to go and be able to enjoy and do those things, but also to give them the support to be able to go to move up economically, right? Economic mobility. So OEWD is going to provide some trainings and workshops. We're going to work with the Department of Public Health to provide healing center practices to really help folks understand how to engage with their children and not bring the dysfunction from our past, right? Right? Because I mean, like, even though I ain't mad at it, right? Like, it raised me, but I know, I do remember, I think I only had to do it once where I had to pull the switch off the tree because I did something. It only took one time for me. I was like, I don't like that. That is not a good feeling. But that, some of those practices that we had, right, may not have been the best for our folks, right? But again, what is it that we do? How do we show love, but how do we also give boundaries to our young people? So that is a really huge part of that we want to do. I think the other thing of it is that, like when you talk about education, if I struggled with education, right, if I felt some kind of way going to school or engaging with teachers or advancing, then it's going to be that much harder for me to even provide that type of support for my young people, for my children. So I think it's a whole gamut of things that we want to do, but we've invested in this first go round for the Fatherhood Initiative. We're going to work with Code Tenderloin. We're going to be working with folks in Potrero. We're working with Collective Impact. We've got all these different partners that we're going to try. We're targeting 75 dads. We want to get them resources, guaranteed income, help them engage with their children, get additional resources in there and support them in that regard, right? And so the challenge here is, for me, anytime we say we're doing something targeted like that, how people want to automatically put the negative spin on it, right? Like, we know we need to, this is not about gender bias. This is about the fact that we know that there's less than 6% of the population is Black in San Francisco, but the majority of folks that are incarcerated in the male prison are Black, right? So we need to be intentional about our Black daddies, right? About our Black men, that we need to make some investments. And the more we can do on the front end of that, I'm going to be really excited to see us do that kind of investment, make that kind of commitment, and not just be only for dads that are in trouble, because that is the other thing that you hit on. And we have heard from so many young people that in San Francisco, a lot of times our kids of color, our low income kids, have to be in trouble before they get the resources, because all of our resources are going to response, right? And even our prevention resources are targeting folks that are behavioral problems. But what do we have in place? Because students do exist, right? Let's shift the narrative from all Black kids are in trouble, not going to school, not doing well in school, right? And don't have caring support systems. We also have to make sure that we are supporting folks that do have a dad that is home and involved in it. Like, I'm looking at you, John Henry, you doing stuff. I'm sorry, I keep Jean. I don't want to keep putting in add that last name on there. I'm gonna get it right with the French connotation. But I think we also have to be really intentional about how we're supporting folks that are not only in their children's lives, but other people's kids' lives and their grandkids' lives. They want to be able to take their kids to the museum and get ice cream and take a trip somewhere the same way. And we want to make sure that we're building that space. And I think that's the challenge, because we are always in reaction mode and we're not in the, like, we are good people and let's give folks the benefit of the doubt, and they just need resources. And if we resource it, we'll get the outcomes that we want.
Man, definitely. Brittany, you want to jump in there? I know you have some good stuff you want to ask Director Davis.
Yeah, no, I've been listening to everything you've been saying, Dr. Davis. And I do agree with everything you've been saying just about the importance of engaging fathers. I know that when you were going through the list, I noticed on the list that you had one outreach center. It was like an outreach one-stop center. And I know in the work that I do, I'm like really big on community engagement strategies and like getting information out to the community, making sure that they get the right data, the information and knowledge, access to the resources. And so I wanted to know if you could provide any insight on the vision behind that outreach center, if you know what it's going to be providing and what it's going to do.
Yeah, again, that is the ones that's left from a 2001 recommendation. And I think what I like, much like you, there are two things that I think of when I think about your expertise and what you bring to the table, Brittany. One is like understanding how all of this stuff impacts our health and well-being, right? Our mental health as well as our physical health, and like how are we making those investments? That education, employment, all of that impacts how we walk through life, right? How we see ourselves impacts how we feel about ourselves, which impacts what we eat, how we're moving, and all of that. But then the other piece of that is so important for me, I laugh because Jeff Adachi rest in power, as they say. He used to get on me because I would talk to him and I'd be like, and we so he'd be like, who is we? Why do you keep talking about we? And I think the power of we, like the power of outreach and engagement, and knowing that when you speak, that you are not speaking for yourself, but you're speaking on behalf of a collective and a collaborative, is empowering and important. And so when I see that, that coupled with the piece around the media outreach, I think that is the piece that we want to leverage through the narrative shift with the Dreamkeeper initiative. Really thinking about like, how are we disseminating information? How are we sharing it? How are we understanding? Like the city has a rule that anything that gets posted on the city's website has to be for like at least a 5th grade reading level, right? And a lot of times we want to prove how smart we are, or how down we are, and we using these words. And I laugh sometimes because I tell people sometimes when they talk to me that I feel like I am I'm watching In Living Color when they used to have that sketch about a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And they'd be on there talking about the indemnification of the sanctification of the illumination of the product. I'm like, come on, like what? I don't understand what any of that means. Could you just like say it plain and straight? Like, how are we getting the words out? I don't want to be, I know Rita had asked a question about the Reparations Advisory Committee, and I had given some folks a hard time because we'd done the community meeting and we were in there and like they were reading some, and they gave us something to read. And I was like, I'm gonna give it to President Walton. And he was like, no, you read it. And I was like, it's too deep for me. I'm gonna have to have somebody else read it. And as we were reading it, the people in the community kept going, what are you saying? What are you trying to say? Right? Like, so that outreach center is really about how do we make it plain? How do we share that information? How are we getting it out there? But I think the challenge that we have right now, and some of this actually came up with the Reparations Advisory Committee, right? If we're building a hub, where does the hub get built, right? We really got to figure out collectively, is it one hub, right? Are we saying that it only has to be in the Fillmore because Fillmore was the first place to be impacted by redevelopment and it was the Harlem of the West? Are we going to really own and acknowledge that there are hubs and spaces and places that were historically Black, right? And that continue to be a high presence of Black folks. So what does it look like if we build this out? And part of what we wanted with Narrative Shift is to get to that space, right? That we say we need to get our stories out there. We need to figure out how we're disseminating those stories. We also need to figure out the messaging around what it is that we are doing. I recently wrote this blog about Dare to Dream because the language that was coming at me about this fellowship was cash for criminals. And I'm like, why is it that, somebody makes a mistake and they got to be labeled that for the rest of their life? And I'm like, but we don't have a place to counter that language, that narrative, right? Where is the online repository for folks to go and be like, oh, this is what it really means. This is what it really is, right? Like we talk about, they used to have that, Key and Peele had that sketch about the Obama translator, right? The anger translator, right? We need to have something that translates what it is that we are doing in the Black community, so it doesn't get lost in the translation from other communities and other folks. And so, I mean, it's a long answer to really what's a simple thing, is that we do need to have outreach hubs, right? We need to have points of contacts. We need to have a strategy. And I'm hoping that what's happening with both sides of the conversation, what we're going to fund with the Narrative Shift is going to provide some of that online platform. What I'm worried about are the folks who aren't online, right? The folks that maybe are still just hanging out at, I talk about the Fillmore Mini Park, or we talk about Mendel Plaza. We talk about some of the folks that are out there still just having face-to-face, honest conversations. How are we getting the messaging to them? How are we sharing that information? How are we getting it to our folks in public housing? How are we getting it to our folks who are like, I go to work and I come home, right? Like, that's it. I think that's the challenge, and that's the piece that we got to build up. And, that's why things like, I didn't get to do it last week, but the hike and going out and inviting folks out is really important. That's why, Big Black Brunch, those things are really important. But I got to figure out what I want us to figure out, and maybe it's what Maika's doing at India Basin, or it's what APRI is doing at India Basin. How are we actually doing a mobile outreach, right? Is it a bus that we just are driving around with and, passing information out? Is it an ice cream truck that when you get the ice cream, you also get something else? I mean, I would love more information on what that looks like. and I get the idea too around marketing campaign and hiring folks to do all of that. Like we're looking at doing that, hiring someone to support the reparations advisory committee on some of that language. And to be honest, after the backlash of the Dreamkeeper Fellowship, I'm also looking at, we probably have to do that for Dreamkeeper, because the Dreamkeeper initiative became about cash for criminals, and it's so much more than that narrative and that language that the mainstream media was putting out there.
Yeah, I wanted to know how you felt about that. With the mainstream media and, you know, this program going national, making national news, and even, you know, coming up on TMZ, and the way that the headline that they had for the program, like you said, it doesn't capture the essence and the importance, you know, of the program and what it's going to do for our city and what it's going to do for our communities. And so I just wanted to know, like, how did you feel when you read that, when you saw that on TMZ?
Well, I just wanted to see it on TMZ, and I was like, oh, there's another one I need to look up. It's funny because I have been working with somebody about, like, you know, what's my long-term plan? What's my goal? And, you know, they tell you to do all this stuff, like, you know, find out what's being out there about you. And she was like, oh, some of this stuff that's coming up this week, you don't want to attach that to your name because it's so negative. Like, it might mess your necks if you try to get another job. They may be like, she paid people to shoot people. She was paying people not to shoot people. And I'm like, that's not what it is, you know? So initially I was devastated, right? Like because I didn't even see it. I didn't know the thing. So basically the mayor talked about a program that we had done in the Western Addition, which was prevention, which was paying young men that potentially would be involved in stuff to come in, to do these workshops, to do training. And we were just talking about the success of being able to bring them in and build those relationships. And so she was saying she wanted that we were building this other program to do something similar. There was no press release. There was no nothing. And so when somebody called me and said, hey, I want to know more about this, I said, look, I'm really hesitant to talk about this because I know that it's going to turn into a negative story. He said, oh, yeah, I'm sure, because some people probably will call it cash for criminals. I said, yeah, I'm trying to avoid that. Right? Like, so I do this whole spiel about, like, I don't want to talk about it because it'll be negative. And then I got a text from somebody that was like, what's up with you? And I was like, what? They were like, what, you paying people not to shoot people? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then they sent me the link and I was like, oh, and it was on this site where the people had, like, you know, they tell you never look at the comments, right? So they were on this site where these people were like going in and I was like, oh my God, what happened? So I was freaked out. Then it kept coming. And then people started, the news media like reached out and I was like, should I respond? Should I not? And they were like, well, you at least kind of have to go and try to tell your version of the story, even though they're going to put out what they want to put out. So I had all this remorse for, like, oh, I should have never talked about it. I shouldn't have answered the call. Like, I just had all this, like, you know, because we all struggle with imposter syndrome or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is, you know, and I wasn't trying to be out there. I just had all this negative emotion. And then, you know, and then I was like, oh, and there somebody was like, oh, it's going to be actually Felicia Jones was like, it'll be fine. It'll be gone. It'll be over soon enough. And every time I thought it was dying down, then somebody would be like, it's in Scotland. And I was like, what? So I'm like, and I didn't get a chance. David will be up next. You know, I didn't get a chance to talk to David Muhammad, but, you know, we're not paying people not to do stuff. We're paying people to actually share their expertise, to develop strategies. Like, I kept trying to do the narrative shift. And then finally, you know, we did have, thanks David for sharing that, because I haven't seen that either. We did have, like, the Chronicle last weekend ran a story really saying, you know, trying to clear it up and say that there was hope for it. There were some other folks that have done that. So, you know, I initially was, like, really in my feelings. And then I was like, am I going to have to find another job? But I think what was more troubling, like, I even hate to repeat some of it, but, like, literally I had people being like, I'm on this street and I got itchy fingers. And if you don't come bring me my check, I'm like, what? Or, I mean, people wishing really bad things on all the women in my office. I'm just like, what is going on here? the kicker is, and like I am, you know, a woman of faith, like I like grew up in the church, and like that's the kicker is doing it in the name of Christianity. Like you are wishing bodily harm on folks in the name of God. Like, give me a break. Give me a break. So Brittany, I was just like, I could for a while, I was like, don't turn on the TV. Don't like look on social media, because you know, I closed my Instagram for like one day because somebody started trolling me on there, and I was just like, ah. But you know, it is what it is. I just
thanks for me being a protector, Ms. Davis. Because of all of the people that was coming for you, that was defending. And I got all kind of trolls in there. They hate both sides of the conversation, and y'all support this great. But you know, I'm not gonna let them come for you. So I've been getting a lot of smoke. But you know,
I know
it is what it is.
Henry, because I would say like you. I was like, nope. Usually people be resharing stuff, and I was like, I don't know if it wanted reshared or not. But you know, even on LinkedIn, somebody said something, and I appreciated John Henry. But you know, I was like, I don't know what to do with this. These people are really angry. And I had somebody that was like, we are talking about saving lives, right, and investing in safety. And if folks are upset about that, I don't know how you. I had a friend who said to me, because I was like, this thing went to Fox News, right? Like, so I started having all these Fox News people responding and sending emails. And he was like, look, there's a different narrative there, like, and you're not going to be able to rationalize that away. So, you know, I had some conversations with the police department and other folks, and they were like, look, you know, just think about it. If you get 10 people in this program, right? You're talking about $6,000 each, $60,000 at best, right? And that's if they do everything, they finish and they do whatever. It costs that much to incarcerate one person. And that's not even the cost of like the DA, the public defender, whatever impact they have on the community, whatever has to be done there. So even if one of those folks like are like make a change, we have saved the money that we spent for the program. If nothing else, it's actually fiscally conservative. And the other thing of it is that we're not talking about people that are going to get like the $6,000. If they was going to do something, that $6,000, they're not getting ready to use $6,000 to go buy like some gun that now we're going to be like, they like it just the narrative of it. I just had to rationalize with myself because I was reacting to all the people that were sending me stuff.
Wow, crazy stuff. But before you go, because I know we up on time, we got to bring up Felicia Jones and David Muhammad next. I mean, I know if you can hang on a little bit because I want to bring them up with you. But, you know, about the outreach and mobilization, definitely on those conversations. I think it's a community conversation that we should have. What does that look like? You know, just doing some of the assessments that we're doing on our end. From our media standpoint, just looking at some of the programming, what I'm finding is a lot of organizations are just using their internal CRM system as the outreach, right? So when they go after funding and they're doing stuff and they say an outreach, it's just to their program. So if I don't make contact to that program or you don't have access to my email address or information, or I'm not in your system, then I don't get that information. So I think we just have to find out how do we, you know, one, centralize the information in a sense. And I think that's a conversation community we could talk about. But then how do we get our community organizations in that network of centralizing the information? Because I think a lot of the information it is there. I just think when we talk about outreach, when it comes to organizations, they just think about their internal organization, and then we miss half of the people. So if you say, well, hey, I didn't get the information. Well, we sent it out in an email. Well, who did you send it out to? Oh, the 1,000 people that's in my email chain. Well, what about the rest of the people on this community that needs those services? You know, That's why I think we just gotta.
But I think the other thing of this is too, right? Like we all have a limited reach, right? And so part of this, getting to other folks outside of your norm. But if you got the information and you telling me them other folks didn't get the information, why you didn't share it with them? That's the other thing that I'm like, when I tell you I shared something with you, and you say you ran into somebody who didn't know it, first thing is share their information with me so I can include them next time. But second, you are all deputized. I'm deputizing everybody to share the information and help us get it out there. Don't come back to me and say you talked to 20 people who didn't know about it. And then when I ask you, well, did you tell those 20 people where the website is or the information or share? And you say no, that is my job. Look, I tell folks through the Dreamkeeper Initiative, I don't have the email address of every Black person in San Francisco, contrary to like popular belief. Like I don't have a Rolodex, which is old school, but I don't have a Rolodex with the names of everybody that's Black in San Francisco. So really just how do we build that? How do we share that? But then also just remember when you run into somebody that says they don't know about it, inform them, and then let's build that shared database.
No, I think that's very important. Like you said, the boots on the ground. I would love to see both sides of the conversation street team with some young people out there passing it out. Again, we have to utilize all of our media handles. We're like you said, we're just one hub. We need to use the Bayview newspaper. We need to use all of our tactics to get this information out to the community. But I would love to see, some of the young people get paid stipends to go door to door. To put door hangers up, talk to people and educate them. But we're going to do our part here to make sure that information get out on all of our live shows, any events that we're out. We're going to continue to do our part to push that information out to community because sometimes our community say they don't get the information, and we know sometimes it's there, but making sure that our organizational leaders do their part as well to collaborate and get that information out to community. But before we let you go, Director Darius, we'll bring up Brother David Muhammad, Felicia Jones, and then whenever you have to jump off, you can. But I know you wanted to be a part of a little bit of that before you get out of here and do that. So with that being said, we're going to bring up our amazing sister, Miss Felicia Jones, with the HRC, Wealth and Disparities, just a fighter for Black folks. So y'all don't know, we're going to fight for Black folks with her. But we're going to bring up my sister, Felicia Jones, and then we're going to bring up Brother David Muhammad and talk about some of this community violence. All right.
Them all be on here, John Henry. They can hold their own. I'm gonna hang around and listen in and chime in. But they have been poor David. I was like, David, these people, what's up?
Lord have mercy.
Miss Felicia, she lived for the fight.
Right, that's right.
She was ready. She stayed ready.
That's right.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Director Davis.
So we're just going to open up the conversation. Community again. We're talking about community violence. Our YouTube is open. Use the live chat. If you're on our Facebook page, you can use the chat for today's conversation. If y'all have questions for any of the panelists today, or you guys have ideal solutions, we're always trying to find ways to better impact our community and violence. But Ms. Felicia Jones, if you want to go ahead and just open up to community, who you are, for folks who might say they don't know you, since we always have this information. You don't know who you listeners.
Yes, well, thank you, John Henry, for inviting me, and thank you, Director. She's always so right on time. I just really admire her, and I just want to give a shout out to her as my mentor, and how she moves and grooves, and supporting not only Black people but all people. That's a special gift. So thank you, Director, for that. My name is Felicia Jones. I have been a community activist since I was 16 years old, working with the Black community, first starting in San Mateo County and then going to East Palo Alto, Redwood City, Oakland, San Francisco. So I've always had a love for Black people, and I didn't feel ashamed to be able to say that I love Black people. And that's not to say that I'm anti, white or Hispanic or Asian, but, I am pro-Black, and I don't feel I have to bow down, to anyone when I say that. So I work for San Francisco Sheriff's Department. I develop programs for inmates inside San Francisco Sheriff's Department. And I also work with the Human Rights Commission, loving the work there. And then also I am the founder of Justice for Mario Woods Coalition and Wealth and Disparities in the Black community. And so I consider myself a activist, not a politician. So being an activist and not a politician, then I can come unapologetically as a strong Black woman. So that's who I am.
All right. And this is not the church. This is both sides of the conversation. So we want you to be who you are, authentic, and your authentic self.
Yes,
With that being said, go ahead, Brother David Muhammad. Go ahead and let the people know who you are, what you're doing, and your role in helping combat some of the violence in the community.
Hello. First, my name is David Muhammad. I'm the executive director of the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, but I'm happy to be with you all today. I appreciate the invite and be in this conversation, particularly with these extraordinary sisters, Director Davis and Felicia. And so thank you. And so I've worked in the criminal justice system, around the criminal justice system for a few decades now, trying to help people who are in the system, help people coming out of the system. In fact, my career in this work began. I went to school for journalism. I don't know how I got involved in this mess, but but actually, there was a direct route. I was working for a news agency in San Francisco and began teaching writing workshops in juvenile hall, 1997 in YGC, as we called it then, in San Francisco, and from then have played about every role you can imagine, but currently working with Director Davis and others, originally on the mayor's juvenile justice reform blue ribbon panel, and now on the closed juvenile hall work group. But in addition to that, working with the city to develop this gun violence reduction strategy, which will have this component of the fellowship. And so playing a role providing technical assistance and training and management support to the effort.
All right, great stuff, great stuff. So with that being said, we're going to jump straight into this conversation because as you all know, gun violence has impacted our communities here in San Francisco dramatically over the years. This weekend we had another violent weekend where we had some loss of lives, and there's been a lot of community members reaching out about the amount of shootings that have taken place over the last 90 days, and our elders of the community are afraid to go to the store. They're afraid that gunfire might erupt. They can't go to the banks. We have community leaders who are saying that they just ready to move and get out. So with the community, what we want to bring not only resources here in the awareness piece, but what can we do to fix this problem, and what are you all collaborating to bring to this change in our city?
I'll maybe start out. So a couple pieces, I think, for clarity, I put in the chat. Hopefully folks have access to it, an op-ed that we pressed the Examiner to allow us, and to their credit, which I wouldn't say that initially, they allowed us to publish, with being very critical of the coverage that they launched that went crazy around the world. But to take it to the reality is we've been working on a strategy to really pinpoint the small number of people who are involved in gun violence in the city of San Francisco. Despite, I think, common belief, it's a really small number of people who are at the very highest risk of gun violence. It's older than we generally think. The average age of a homicide suspect in San Francisco is 37 years old. Now, when you just focus on shootings, it's 28. But even that's larger than older rather than what folks think. And it's a very specific risk profile of the folks who 75% or so of the shootings in San Francisco are very identifiable folks that we can predict the violence, and therefore we could prevent it. And wanting to engage those folks in intensive supports and opportunities, connect them with somebody who has had similar lived experiences as them, someone who's turned their lives around, someone who could be an example, a mentor. And that really is the process of helping them make better decisions, and their better decisions leading to better outcomes and reduce violence. To incentivize that process, we should also provide some financial incentive. The financial incentive is not the program. It's a small component of the program. It's really around engaging folks in this intensive, positive, trusting relationship with what's often called a credible messenger, someone who may be from their neighborhood or may have been in their crew, someone who has been there, done that, turned their lives around, is this extraordinary kind of example, and that can spend time with them intensely over time, helping someone come out of their heavy risk level. And so the other thing I just quickly say about the foolishness around the money is several studies, and I'll put a link to this website in the chat that we have, which shows several studies of the cost of gun violence in cities around the country, particularly in California, is extraordinarily expensive. When you look at taxpayer spending, when police response and ambulance response and fire EMT response and investigators respond to the scene, then there's an incarceration, a trial, a hospitalization. And those taxpayer costs add up to, at minimum, $1 million per shooting in California. And up to 2 million in California. The national average is about 1 million. And so when we say that we may be able, and it's proven that we can reduce gun violence through a intensive life coach, a credible messenger, supportive programming, and a little bit of financial incentives. Not only do we save life, which is most important, but we actually get a return on investment. So the extremely uninformed folks who have an issue with this, but primarily that is due to the fake news that came out of it. But the great need for clarity, and hence the need for this conversation.
And I would just add to that, John, I gotta, Miss Felicia on here, I gotta make sure she knows Joan. That we really are trying to, that this is one, and I appreciate you putting that in the op-ed, David, that this is one of several strategies that we're trying, right? Like, we're doing guaranteed income. Miss Felicia's going to talk a little bit about focus groups and some fellowship projects that she's working on, like mentoring and all of that. So, we're trying to hit it at every different space and place, like not just saying that it's one thing. David has a very intentional, which is a complicated, formula, right? And that it's even engaging folks. Like, I know that there's a question about, is it referral based? Right, like there's a lot of different pieces to this, right? Like the referral may work for a different type of program, but what David's doing is very intentional, right? Like, so I've had, there's people calling up saying, pay me, I'm not going to shoot. Like, that's not how it works. But that we really are trying to make this investment, but across the pipeline as well. So that's part of where, David's got a very intentional core group. And that Ms. Felicia and I are really looking at this front end prevention with folks that takes maybe a lighter touch, that really we're just talking about how do you redirect.
So, Director Davis, can I ask you this question real quick before you go? Because I think you said it earlier about messaging. And I think sometimes, I'm going back to that messaging thing, because I think also, the sloganation of stuff, right? Like when we talk about defund the police, is it better for us, not only from a standpoint of how this stuff comes out, to really break down the information? Because sometimes when you just hear defund the police, it triggers people, right? Or if you hear we're paying criminals to do this, it triggers people, but we don't really get the information, right? Because if we just really broke down and said, well, we're defunding the police because of this, X, Y amount of the money are being spent for militarized equipment that we don't need in our community, right? And I think that relieve some of the community concerns, or the people who oppose it with the messaging. So I think that's like, how do we message things so that we actually break down what's happening, so that people are not like triggered and saying, oh, this is, and we get that reaction.
But I think that's the piece that, Brittany talked about earlier, that you also mentioned. I think the challenge here is, even if you talk about it, and I don't know what, David, what you think, but I think even in the first article that went out, right, that spurred everything, the headline is what messed it up. The content wasn't really that bad.
That's exactly right.
And so I think the challenge that we have here is that sometimes in order to get people to read what you have, right, they have to put something, because our folks will be like, that doesn't apply to me, or it doesn't, whatever. Like, the sound bites are what people have, the pieces that you can get on a carousel on Instagram, or what you can post on social media, because so many folks that's where they get their news from. So I think the challenge for us in this process is twofold. One, to what you're saying, we definitely need to have more opportunities to break down the information. But then the second is, yes, the messaging, but what does the messaging look like to get people to come to it, right? So if we say we're having a town hall meeting about housing, as you maybe saw from this weekend, the folks that are most impacted by it may not show up. But if you say they get ready to evict everybody that's in Section 8, well, folks may show up and be like, what's happening, including people that own property, because they want to make sure that the people that they want to do Section 8 for. So I think we're stuck in this weird space of, how do I get, as they used to say, butts in the seat? How do I get people out, right? How do I get people to turn their cameras on, right? And hear what I'm saying to get to that point. So community meetings like that, Ms. Felicia, I don't know if you want to talk about the focus groups, because that's part of what we're trying to get to your point. How do we get into spaces? How do we have conversations with folks? But we do need to break it down. But you tell me how to get the folks that we really need to break it down to show up. Because what we have is, a certain body comes and backlogs the community meetings or the board of supervisors meetings with defund the police with the same statement we hear for like 3 hours, right? But the people, if I go knock on some doors in Bayview or Fillmore and grandma answer the door, grandma's not telling me to defund the police. So, I think that these conversations in community and and not being like, I know what's best for you, let me just do it. And I think that's a hard thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I want to hear what Felicia had to say, but I think you hit it, and I opened up with that accountability for us in the community. We complain, but what are we doing? And then I hear the brother saying about the community meeting. How do we get the young people that's shooting to the thing? Because when these community meetings are happening, the young people that's out there doing the crime, they ain't coming to the meeting, right? And then how do we rethink about the people that's really committed to this work? And that's why I want to hear from Felicia, because I'm like, I'm tired of the food, right? Everybody want to show up food. I want to see the real people that care about Black people, that want to see this violence stop. Okay, I'm telling y'all, I told y'all, I am opening my mouth now. I am tired of what's going on. I'm tired of all this partying. Okay, I want to see my people getting support, help, and resources. We got a mental health crisis. How do we pay these people in our community? Because we know in the Black community, it's taboo when we talk about mental health. How do we put funding there to pay these people to go get help? Like, we got to start back at the basics, right? Because again, grandma's showing up to the community meeting, Auntie Faye, some of the community organization leaders, but where's Lil Ray Ray at? That's who I want. I don't want to hear from I want Lil Ray Ray. How do we get Lil Ray Ray in the community meeting? That's what I want to know, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because I'm tired of the invite, show up, sign in, here goes some food. We talked about it, and there's no action. I want Lil Ray Ray there. We need to hear from him what he needs. How do we support him? And I know we got to get the mental health component in, but Sister Felicia, go ahead. Tell us about this, what you're trying to do, because I want to hear how we're going to help these people.
Well, for me, I think the whole thing, we talked about a lot of different things, and, Director Davis touched on some things, David touched on some things, but really what's going on is no improvement in anti-Blackness racial disparities among Black San Franciscans. That, for me, that's the crust of it. So, all across all lines, Black people, we have the highest disparities, whether we're talking about education, health, housing, mass incarceration, all of it. And I began, when we talked about fellowship, for me, I bring to the table the mentoring piece, because the mentoring piece is so important, and it brings in the intervention, which can equal transformation. And that's what I like to work on. And so inside the jails, we did Discovering Your True Self, Project Breakthrough. I kept looking at all these, young men, and nobody wanted to work with them. And I said, well, wait a minute, I'll work with them, because, they were considered JCATs. I said, I'll work with them, and we developed Discovering Your True Self. And Discovering Your True Self, our motto was money, sex, drugs, guns, and gangster rap, is to defeat this false image that they have developed, as a lie in which they believe is truth. And so we begin to work on it and just chip away at the false image to bring them back into their authentic self. And so when you begin to look at violence, and I know David had said, the average age is 30 doing the shootings. Well, I guess all the youngsters who do the shootings are in jail, because, I did some statistics, and research, and a lot of times people don't want you to know the research, and I had to really dig deep to try to get it. And so, just looking at from the ages of 18 to 25, it was 277 people in jail, right? 54% of them were Black. You know what their main crime was? 50% of those who were in jail, of the 54%, it was murder. And when I saw that statistic, it just broke my heart. I mean, these are people, and then what happens is they're sitting behind these jail cells, for 5, 6, 7 years fighting their cases. And so again, it's mentorship. I think mentorship is so important. And then again, when we try to bring into San Francisco something good, giving people a stipend, for their time is nothing wrong with that, because they have neglected Black San Franciscans, as I say, and director teases me about it. 3 reports in 55 years, and Black people, we're worse off now than we were 55 years ago. And so when we did the Violence Prevention Summit on August 16th, it was like, okay, now, a lot of people turned out. It was great, but now we got to get into the weeds, as Dr. Davis says, the weeds. She be cracking me up when she says that. So I'm learning what the weeds are. But, for me, I call it the trenches. So we got to get in the trenches, boots on the ground, boots on the ground. And I always said, I'm not afraid of my own people. You can't be afraid to go into the trenches, boots on the ground, to work with your people. So we're going to do focus groups starting September 28th. We got focus groups at Alice Griffin, Carter Terrace. We have focus groups coming to the OMI. We have focus groups coming to Sunnydale, Potrero Hill, even Hastings Law School. We're going to be doing a focus group with Black students to gather information as to what do you need? What are your concerns about violence in your own community, and to get people involved. Now, we also believe in paying people, so they will get a stipend, in the way of gift cards, because we have to pay our people for our time. A lot of people want to always come into our community, gather information, get the information, and say thank you and move on. You know what I'm saying? So it's just so much. And, when you look at it, around just breaking down that whole thing of what young people, and I say the TAY population for me is 18 to 30, because, a lot of folks say 18 to 25. Well, what happens to the age group of 26 to 30? They fall through the cracks. So my TAY population is 18 to 30. And to begin to really work with them. Now you say, how you going to get little Richie?
Little Ray Ray and little Pookie.
Bubba, how you gonna get little Richie, little Bubba to the meetings? Well, they ain't coming.
Richie, I want to know who named Richie. You in the community like that.
Little Bubba, Ice, because for me and my programs, they're not allowed to use their street names. And I call them all by their last name, Mr. So they can kind of get away from using those street names, right? But the thing of it is, they're not coming because there's a trust issue, right? And for them to come, they're going to have someone who they trust implicitly for them to come to the meetings. Or you're going to have to go and meet them on their turf, you know what I'm saying? And work with them there. Why is it that we always have to have them come? Why can't we go to them? You know what I'm saying? And so it's just a huge endeavor, but it's an endeavor that along with the Dream Keepers Initiative and Dr. Davis and David with his help, and we're going to bring in Devon Bogan, who was one of my mentors also from the Oakland Mentoring Center, and also from Richmond, who started this whole thing where they dubbed him paying criminals for cash, but the thing of it is, it works, and it's not criminals. We are people. We are people who need help. I mean, again, looking at the disparities of Black people across the board, when you look at District 10, it has the highest, ratio of Black people, which is only about, 13,000. District 5 have 7,000 Black people, and District 6 have 6,000 Black people. But then when you look at it, from an Asian point of view, it's over 29% Asian in District 10 now, 19% Latino in District 10 now. And so even though the times are changing with the population, the issues are still the same. The issues are still the same. And I'm like you, John Henry, and I've been said it. I'm tired of folks talking. You know what I'm saying? Let's get our boots on the ground and let's get some work done. And then if you don't know how to do this work, then step aside, slide aside, move aside, and let those of us who do know how to do the work, let us step in and do what we know, what we can do to help our community.
Now you talking like that, you're triggering me now, because now you're talking about some of our things, right? And I see somebody in the comments asking about bringing it to the people, and I agree with you. We should bring it to the community. But so many times in our community, how do we keep conversations central in the community? Because a lot of times when it's something happening, it's always at the church. So when we start thinking and talking about the church, we start losing people, right? And I don't have nothing against nobody's religion. When I say this, people get mad. Every time we have issues in the community, whether it's violence, the first thing we want to do is set up at the church. Soon as you say we in the church, everybody say, I ain't going, I don't want to do that. Because soon as I start saying what I got to say, they're going to shut me down, take the mic, and all of this. So I want to make it what it is. I don't care where we go in the streets. All I'm asking for all these committees everywhere, let's keep a neutral ground so that everybody feels welcome. We got to keep the conversation perspective, but we got to keep a neutral ground. Go ahead, Director David. Sorry.
I'd say I was laughing because my son passed by and he looked, and when you were saying that, and then you want to take, he was like, it's true. You know, I always want to go take it to the church. But I think a couple of things, you know, and I would kick it over to David for his opinion as well. But I think a couple of things that Ms. Felicia said, you know, elevated for me. One is, you know, like we don't even purport to know it all, right? That's part of why this process of engaging with folks that are directly impacted or connected or engaged in some of this stuff, right? And that we are, I think the challenge is, to her point too, that why are we labeling people criminals, right? Once they've done what they've done their time and done their you know, paid their debt to society, as they say, right? Then they get to come out and they get to be people. They shouldn't be labeled like that, right? And then by essence, in the way that people are defining this, anywhere they go to get a job, right? Then the job could be said that they're paying criminals, right? Like, because they are, like, so we're saying we want folks to get work, that we want them to become gainfully employed, that we want them to give back to society, that we want them to be active members in their community. And we're saying that we're taking folks with lived experience, that we're going to compensate them for their time, and folks are still using this in this negative connotation, right? So I want to say we need to be making these investments to be able to get folks to get the support they need, to understand that, to be connected with mentors, right? To pay people to be mentors, because there are folks who've gone through the process with lived experience that can do that and that can show up in community in a real way, right? I know earlier somebody was talking about, like, they want an esports arena for our young people, right? And it's not anything that is unusual in other communities, right? And I think, David, you can speak more to the question about, like, the unfortunate, I always hate to get into the numbers again about, like, how many Black folks are committing the crimes and all of that, because people use that to paint this negative narrative, but we never get to the root causes, right, of why this is happening. It's not because one people is inherently bad, right? It's because the system has created a space and place for that, but that we get focused on, well, if Black people are the ones that are predominantly doing the crimes, then they must be bad people. We should just lock them up. Like, I think that's the narrative we're trying to shift.
Before David go, David, I just want to say this because Director David just triggered me again. I'm triggered today, y'all. Y'all know I'm a little. Y'all know that I love my young people. I'm very passionate about this conversation. But when you talk about, you know, the money and what we're paying, like, this is one of the issues that I have, right? I look at some of the assessments of what's going on, and it's like, we in our communities pay so much money to consultants, but the people that actually do the work, we don't pay them nothing, right? These people pay $20 an hour. You know, I really believe if we want to get more Black males involved, we have to up that. We have to figure out a way, because these consultants come in here, and I've watched it from Oakland, different counties. They pay them millions and millions of dollars to come in here and tell us how to fix our problem, and the problem never gets fixed. We got people in the community, small grassroots organizations. How do we increase the wages to get our people that can do the work a wage that's, you know, work? I mean, you're talking about people who have to go in these communities where there is violence and there's shootings. They put their lives on the line. but they the most underpaid. That a person that's sitting up in Beverly Hills, creating all the curriculum, we paid him $10 million to come up with the ideal, and he's safe in his home. But the people that's boots on the ground, it's a lot. I always say that, and it gets me upset. And I understand how structures and things work, but how do we move some of that to the people that's actually working with these people in these difficult communities?
Well, I do just want to say David is not getting millions, so I want to give it a little bit. I don't know what he's getting, but he ain't getting millions. But I would just say, I think, again, John, this is where we got to figure this out, because it's a little bit of both and, right? Because we also talk about, and no disrespect, I ain't trying to offend nobody. We talk about poverty pimps, right? We talk about the industrial nonprofit complex. We talk about all of this. I agree totally, right? We can get more people in that industry out of the for-profit world if we paid folks better, right? But we also have to increase the accountability and change the narrative of how people see that, because some folks don't want to come work there because we make it so difficult. It's hard. I'm telling you, I go someplace, I go places sometimes, and I'm like, we have normalized trauma in our communities, especially with our nonprofits, and how we engage with each other. We don't pay people enough for the mental health abuse that they have to, the vicarious trauma that they have to go through to deal with some of this stuff. So in addition, I think we need to be giving people not just good money, we also need to give them, Brittany, some better self-care pieces in the health support, right? So I'm not talking about just access to a therapist. I'm talking about they need a massage, they need a day trip to Napa, they need a bunch of stuff, because the stress is a lot. And that's why we see so much burnout, because it's a lot. People cussing you out for trying to help them. And then, your tires are slashed and, all kinds of stuff that can happen in this space. And then you don't have the job ain't paying to get your tires fixed. So I just think it's a lot and so consultants get it easier because they get to go home and don't nobody know where they live, right? But here you going to work every day and they like, why you tell them I didn't do that work? Because you didn't do that work.
And that wasn't a shot at you, David. But
no.
These consultants, I know some of them are getting good money.
Oh no, I understood exactly what you meant and totally agree.
Yeah, so, they get good money. You're right about that.
And right, and I think that, as you said, right. There's often the RAND corporations, these big corporations, white-run corporations who are brought in by cities, get millions of dollars. I was just having that argument with the city the other day. It's like, wait a minute, you brought in the RAND corporation, paid them $1 million. When it didn't work, you asked me to come do it for $20,000. Now, well, this is a damn problem. So, literally. So anyway, but I do really want to lift up this issue of the folks responding. And so, to Director Davis' point, which is very true, this is a nuanced, complex, complicated discussion that's not easy for soundbite or a quick fix answer, right? But I want to say, for instance, there are many organizations in San Francisco that have received funding for many, many years, that there's many folks in community that question the quality or the return on that investment, right? Sometimes in those very organizations, there's individuals that people think are saints, right? Doing extraordinary work, right? And so it gets even more complicated, like the individuals versus the organization, right? And so, but there are people in cities across the country, including San Francisco, where they're responding to shooting incidents. They're dealing with folks in the community, in challenged communities, in violent situations. We just had a violence interrupter killed in LA, earlier one in DC, and a beloved in Baltimore all this year because of how serious his work is. And then you have first responders who I don't begrudge how much money they make individually. We can talk about department budgets, but individually, but you have officers who on average in the Bay Area clear more than $100,000 each. And then you've got next to them, I'll say some individuals, people like folks that we know, like Rob Newton, Guy, and Chico, right? Folks who are in the community responding, people like Rico Hamilton, like folks who have come up in the hood, who now work to reduce gun violence. They should be making equivalent to what some of the police officers are making, at least, right? And we can argue both need to make more. in terms of how serious it is, the work. And so we do have to better value the work of our folks on the ground in the community, working with these families. It's difficult work. To Director Davis' point, I used to always say, you got to love our people more than they hate themselves sometimes, because helping folks who have been traumatized, who have lived in concentrated poverty, who have structural racism, that gets ingrained in us. And sometimes we're hard to serve, but we have to have that love for our folks to continue to do that work. And it's difficult. Right. And then as soon as one of the people doing the work slips and has a problem, we shouldn't condemn all type of community engagement work either. Right. And so but I do want to just emphasize this point you're making on we should pay folks more. And in fact, right. So the city has the state grant from the California Violence Intervention Program. Half of that grant goes to an organization called SVIP, who we've been trying to help hire new from the community life coaches, right? New folks. And it's been difficult, right? Because folks are saying, you want me to spend 40 hours a week with the people at the very highest risk of gun violence and be in community with them, go to their neighborhoods, their corners, their houses, and you're paying me $50,000 a year, right? And although that's high for this work around the country, which is unfortunate, in San Francisco, we know that that doesn't go anywhere, right? And so we have to do a better job of how we compensate the folks who do this work on the ground.
I got to jump in there, but I'm gonna give it to Brittany because I know she got something she want to throw in there, and this is for the community now because this is both sides of the conversation. You know, as community, doing this work. And this is the accountability thing that, Director Davis is talking about too, because, the people that are in these positions, there's a responsibility that we need them to also understand, right? When they're out in the community working with our young people, we have to lead with integrity. We can't straddle the fence. And I'm just being honest, no personal, nothing, but what I see sometimes is these people who are doing this work, sometimes they straddle the fence. Right. And that also impacts our young people. And I got to keep it real because at the end of the day, this both sides of the conversation, we about keeping it real. We don't care about people's feelings getting hurt. We just keeping it real. Right. What these young people see is what's going to help them change. But when I'm talking to young people and I work with them and I hear, why should I listen to this dude? But he out here, he's smoking weed, he's shooting dice, he doing this, but he trying to tell me to do this, right? And this goes to not just on that level, but then to the community organizations, like Director Davis said. How do we all work together, right? We're asking young people to put guns down, and we have organizations that won't even talk and work with each other as adults. But these are the people leading our community, and then we're asking young people who lost their best friends, families to gun violence to put guns down. Do you think they really go listen to us? So again, the people that's trying to do this work, trying to be a part of this change, have to be have the intentions and the integrity and the character to stand up and be accounted for. Because again, we could do all of this, but if the young people ain't listening, we could increase your pay. But you standing on the corner smoking weed with the kids, you doing this, and you supposed to be the mentor or the leader. I'm just keeping it real, and this is not just in San Francisco. This is all across the country that this is happening. Okay, yep. I get the emails. Okay, there's a lot of people advocating to be leaders, and we got to really let people know what leadership is. Okay, I got several emails from people who say, "Hey, this happened to my son." Okay, this is a community leader. I asked them to take this post down, and they told me they can't do nothing about it, but they're a community leader. Where's the intervention? You get what I'm saying? So, again, I'm not going to just say what the city ain't doing and what because this is what I hear all the time. Shemai them ain't doing nothing. Okay, what are you doing? You want to be a community leader? You want to be a community ambassador? Where is your part in accountability? Making sure what you do, what you post. Okay, these kids is watching. They very technical savvy. I got kids emailing me. Look. Go to this dude Facebook right now. Look what he doing. And sometimes I just got to look and see. And I'm like, oh, this is a community leader. This is a person that's trying to stop violence. This is what we showing our young people and they watching us. I know why they ain't listening. So we got to fix that. Right. So again, nothing to talk about, no one organization or nothing. But again, when the models don't work and the people in place, how do we hold them accountable? How do we refix that? We always talk about reimagining. How do we fix that? Right? We still love you, but bro, you know what I'm saying? You out here doing this, and we got these young people watching you. Like, so that's what we got to think about. Go ahead, Felicia, and then Brittany. Go ahead.
I thought David was going to go next. I'll yield to David.
I was just going to say, one, that's a very, very real issue, and that's the concern, right? It's we have a whole nother show, but you had the American Recovery Plan dollars come out throughout the country, and it's looking relatively good that there's going to be a whole nother $5 billion investment in what the White House is calling community violence intervention work, right? And so, but I was just exactly what you were talking about, John. I was working with a city in Indianapolis, and one of their best folks tried to convince me why he needs to smoke weed with the clients, and I was like, bro, we need to help you get another job. And it was what you said, which is we love you, and if you're committed to that, then let's find you another line of work, because this is what it's required to do this work. All right. And we have to have better training, better professional development, better pay, better support, but also, yes, better accountability.
Yeah. And I was going to say, John Henry, Balloon's sister, I think that was her name, posted something, folks are promising jobs and then they don't give it to them. And my thing is, when we talk about mentors, what is your prerequisite for a mentor, Felicia? Mean what you say and say what you mean. Mean what you say and say what you mean, because you can't be telling people, and this is not only young people, but just people across the board, and especially in our community. Mean what you say and say what you mean, because it's so many of our communities have been lied to. And so here we come, and we're perpetuating that same lie. Come on now, again, I love Black people, and I don't feel the need that I need to lie. I don't feel the need, if I say I'm going to do something, then that's what I'm going to do. And this is why the work with Human Rights Commission and the Dreamkeeper Initiative is so important, that we're trying to bring in and lower some gaps in the Black community around Black San Franciscans. And if we can't hold ourselves accountable, with monies, with your outcomes, with what you say you're going to do, then, what is Dreamkeeper Initiative? And so we can't afford not to have the Dreamkeeper Initiative to rise in excellence for our people. You know what I mean? And so again, we can't lie to people. We got to stop lying to people and thinking these lies, nobody gonna see them, you're not gonna get caught. And it's not even a matter of you getting caught. But again, it goes back to integrity, and how you feel about your own people. We can't talk about what those other people did to Black people, but what are we doing for our Black people? It's important.
Definitely. You must have been reading my mind. And this is why I'm so passionate about this. This is why I'm triggered. Because when you have leadership, great leadership from Director Davis, our mayor, President Shaman, I've been in this city 43 years. And I ain't never seen Black leadership like this. But I've watched more and more Black organizations and Black leaders exposed to the community want to, come down on them. And I'm like, come on, man. At the end of the day, get out of the politics. I don't care about people politics. We Black folks, we got to uplift each other. All this petty stuff going on. And that's why I'm big on all this accountability. I'm calling people out. Okay. This Dreamkeeper thing is big. We got 3 powerful leaders who are pushing something for us. It is our job as organizations, as community leaders, to work together and make this happen. Y'all see how petty they are with the mayor talking about a mask thing all over the news national. Okay. Wait, if we don't do what we supposed to do, what you think they're going to say about this Dreamkeeper and defunding? Yeah, we defunded the police and these community organizations didn't do nothing. So again, I'm going to hold these people accountable. We got a job, community, organizations. We got to uplift our leadership. Get out of the politics. I don't care about the personal stuff. We got to uplift them and support them as they're trying to open up a gateway for us to have sustainability in San Francisco, because we don't get it right this time. I mean, I'm looking in the future. I don't know if we ever go get there, because after this leadership, 8 years down the road, I don't see, if Felicia just said 29% of baby is Asian, I can see that number doubling. Okay, and this is why this education and stuff is so real. What Brittany's doing with health work, mental health, financial literacy, and this is why I'm on these calls fighting against co-ops. Black folks in San Francisco, we need ownership. We got to start educating our people about financial literacy, how to save money, how to invest and own something. We the only people that don't own nothing. Okay, I don't care what they talk about reparations. We give them all the money in the world. Where's we gonna spend that money? And we got no black businesses. No black ownership, nowhere. We got to get this together. That's what I'm saying about these parties is great. I understand COVID. We want to get out and socialize and all of that. But when is we going to take some of this money and actually educate our people so they walk away with something? These people are spending $75,000 to have block parties. We could be paying off some bills, getting people credit right, paying for credit repair. We got 75% of our housing residents 18 months behind in rent. But we out here having block parties, wasting money. Let's get the money to the people. Let's help our people. We are in a crisis right now, okay? We have people out here suffering. We got little kids, 3, 4, 5 years old, sleeping on the streets. We got a fentanyl issue. We got a COVID issue. We got people losing family members through COVID and everything else. We got death with violence. We need some help, people. We got to get behind our leadership, work together. Mental health, DPH, we going to have a conversation about them. They got to do a better job. The largest funding... I'm going there.
Yeah, but John, I think that there's a lot that you're saying there, right? But I think the core of it all begins with the mental health, right? And so if my mind ain't right, my money ain't gonna get right. And so I think this idea of self-love and joy, and I think that's why, like, maybe it's not 75 grand, but we got to figure out something to like bring back value to our communities and value to our folks. Right. And I would say, and this is what I learned from my years in private school. Right. Because when I was in private school, they spending money on events. They spending big. They got linen tablecloths. They got linen napkins. They spending the money. They're celebrating themselves. Right. They're saying that they're worth that extra money. Right. And that, like that old saying that used to say, it takes money to make money. Right, you gotta walk in, you gotta represent it. People gotta see you and put value to you, right? So there's a piece of this that, as we move this first piece out, like I've been having conversations. I was talking with Director Spingola and some other folks, and there's such pressure on Black folks to meet a certain standard, right? When we haven't been equipped to do it yet, right? And so that financial coaching, that investing, like. Look, this is what I learned, because we haven't all seen it all the time, right? When I first started teaching in private school, when I first started teaching 20 plus years ago, the school that I was working at, it cost $18,000 a year for kindergarten, 20 years ago, right? $18,000 a year to go to school. I saw people that had 3 and 4 kids in the school, and it went up as you got older. Right? So you're talking about somebody that's spending $100,000 to put 3 to 4 kids through school. That's how much cash they had. They wasn't on scholarship, nothing. They paying for that, right? And they paid for it up front. They didn't do monthly payments, right? They paid for it up front. They came up in there, and I was like, let me tell you something. You don't know what money looked like. Because if I saw them on the street, if I saw their car parked in the parking lot, I would never in a million years imagine that they was paying $100,000 for their kids to go to school.
That's right. That's right.
So we don't know. We have this false perception of what we see on videos, what we see on TV. We have this false perception of what money is. And so we got to do more to teach our folks what money is. Money is not a purse on your shoulder.
That's right. That's right.
Money is in the bank making you money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still learning that myself. So I think that there's a, first and foremost, folks got to be like, okay, I don't have to wear my money, right? I don't have to prove that I got money, because folks with money, they don't want you to know they got it like that. They're not flashing it like that. But that in first piece, we have to begin by investing in our folks, building that trust, getting them out. And so that's where we go to. I'm with you 100%, but we got to build to that. And we also have to be willing, because guess what? Folks is willing to spend money on everything except for what we needed to be spent on, right? So we have got to be willing to, why are we not worth that? You know, like the jazz festival that used to happen along Fillmore, like that when you looked at that versus what was maybe happening with some of our street festivals, it wasn't the same type of investment, right? And why is it every time I want to do something, I got to have, to David's point, we got to have the Black organizations got to go cheaper. We got to pay less for it and all of that, but then the other ones don't. And I do just want to hit on the question that came up earlier, because we got into this conversation about, somebody asked about whether, it's only Black people that's committing crimes. And so again, we don't want it to be that to be the narrative. But, so I don't know, David, if you have the numbers and specs around that, but we were here to talk about Dreamkeeper Initiative, and like that funding specifically talks about Black folks. And so I don't want it to be like, there ain't no other folks committing crimes. It is other folks committing crimes, but unfortunately it's disproportionately Black folks. And I would argue it's because we don't have the same type of investment in Black folks that we do.
That's right.
Well, we got to be real too.
That's absolutely right.
When white folks and other folks do crime, they don't arrest them. So we get the highest negative impact. So just understand, I've been working in the juvenile hall system for 24 years. And let me tell you, there are a lot of Asians that commit crime. But because of who they are and the demographics they come from, they don't lock them up. Okay, the same thing with our kids in Noe Valley and Upper Haight. They get arrested and they let them go. So that's why we talking about Black and brown folks in here. So whoever said that, I missed that comment. We talking about Black folks. We trying to figure out what's wrong with our Black people. As Director David said earlier, these Negroes, and earlier in the show, these Negroes. I'm talking about Negroes right now. But Brittany, go ahead. Hold on, David. Let Brittany go because she's been waiting patiently. Then I'm going to let you jump back in.
Yes, sir.
I mean, there's been so many topics. I don't even know which one to touch on. We talked about so much. But we were talking about.
That's what happens when you get Black people together, girl.
I know.
Right. So jump in where you fit in, sister.
I know. I mean, so at one point we were talking about the mentorships and just the importance of mentoring and just building the capacity in the communities. And just as someone that works in the community, I see a lot of times where you have a lot of people that don't have the skills to progress themselves. They have the intention to progress themselves, but don't have the skills. But at the same time, they have a fleet of people that, follow them and do everything that they say. Like they have an entourage, they have a people that they can get out and do outreach and, and do a lot of stuff in the community. They have a good following. And so I'm just wondering, with the mentoring portion of this program, what I know, Felicia, you said earlier that you wanted a mentor or someone to, be a person of their word, to like show up, someone to have integrity. But are there any like capacity building trainings that are coming with this program? Anything to like build leadership skills or build the skills of the mentors of people that really want to step up for the community, but may not, really know how? Are there programs for this or trainings for this?
Yeah,
I know what SF Block leadership is doing something with that. Brother Majig and Derek Tolliver, the SF Block is one thing that they're trying to build leadership. I don't know the other folks, but that's one where they're trying to impact the organization leaders and teach them. So that's just one. I'm just throwing that out there. But go ahead, Brother David.
I know Sister Felicia was trying to jump in too. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to go back to mentoring. And for me, mentoring is basically not really the primary of social justice. Mentoring for me is building self-esteem, self-confidence, cultural pride. And with that, you do have a social justice piece where you can, do peer-to-peer education around, for me, we did anti-smoking programs. We did HIV/AIDS program. But first, on a weekly basis, my mentoring programs, those kids came in every week for 2 hours, right? To build self-esteem, self-confidence, and cultural pride, and it was a thing where I worked with them from 8th grade to high school and worked with them through the school year. I didn't work with them during the summer because I was like, I can't compete with the sun. You know what I'm saying? Fed them at the end of the mentorship every year, whatever project we were doing for you coming, gave them $150, $200, to continue. And so until they take ownership of it. And so you have to spend time with these kids. And even when we say kids, even the TAPE population, right? Because the thing of it is, who has been spending time with these kids who now turn into young adults? And then for me, I was having a conversation real quickly. We talk about prevention, intervention, and transformation. And prevention, as far as we know it, is that you have not started.
Oh, your mic muted. You got to unmute your mic, Felicia. You hit your mic.
I said, we talked about prevention, intervention, and transformation. And prevention is where the behaviors have not started. But then as I, over the years, I'm looking and then taking myself as one who has experienced, two sisters being brutally murdered, and, how my life, took a change. The trauma that comes with the prevention, we're not really looking at. We're looking at, keeping kids out of these, bad behaviors, but then also the trauma that goes on in the households, in the communities in which these kids and young adults are feeling has to be addressed also. So again, it's not just having, like you said, having an entourage of kids following you around, that's a social justice piece of it. But for me as a mentor, that's not real mentoring. You have to spend time and put something inside folks for them to, believe in and nourish and cultivate their authentic self.
Yeah, and I know we're close to time, and I gotta hop soon, but let me try to make a complicated comment quickly. Is what I think we're getting at here is this notion of being very clear about what intended impact that you have, right? And what in this work we really get mixed up by not being clear in terms of our intended outcome, or the intended impact of this program is X. And therefore, these set of practices, these services, these interventions are going to achieve X, right? And I always talk about a real experience I had on the East Coast. A city council member said to me, I want to reduce gun violence in the next 12 months. We're going to start a mentoring program for middle school students. And a mentoring program for middle school students is wonderful. It'll never, ever, ever achieve gun violence reduction in the next 12 months, right? Because that's not who's shooting folks, right? And so, being very clear in terms of what your goal. Now, a mentoring program for middle school students might do a bunch of other wonderful things, like increase high school graduation and improve attendance and a bunch of great things. But sometimes because of funders, we try to fit what we're doing into every box so we can get funding, right? Or we're mismatched. And when I give a few more examples, I give the obvious example. Everybody could understand mentoring, but I remember at a conference in San Francisco, folks weren't happy. I said, also, midnight basketball is wonderful. Midnight basketball by itself is not going to stop gun violence. Right. And so understanding that, but it's a great thing to have, great recreation, good youth development, good sports, good, right? And so we shouldn't begrudge it unless you're trying to say it is going to reduce gun violence, right? And so the last thing here is, a play on this analogy of babies in the river. You walking by a river and you see babies in the river drowning to their death. Your natural inclination is to jump in the river and stop those babies from drowning. While you're doing that, you notice that somebody is putting babies into the mouth of the river, you might want to jump out and stop the guy from putting babies in the mouth of the river. And if you're by yourself and you do that, you're now condemning the babies in the river to drown. It has to be both and. It can't be either or, but those are actually two different activities. Stopping a guy from putting the babies in the river and saving the babies drowning right now in the river are both critically important, but different activities. And we need to understand that they're different. And that's similar with programming.
Now you created all this before you go out the door. You should have said that earlier because I want to say something to that. But I think that's a good point, and we got to further this conversation because I do want to be respectful to everybody's time here today, and we really appreciate y'all see the community response. And it kind of took a little bit of time to heat up because we know it is football season and the Niners and the Raiders won, but this is the real important conversation to have. And we just delighted to have you all here. But I agree with you. Sometimes we look at sports and entertainment always to fix the problem. And I have to agree with Felicia. We got to build the character up of these young people. We got to get mental health. Let's get programs that we bring in mental health providers. We bring them enrichment through coaching, like how to pull your pants up, like that basics. Like we got to teach these young people the basics because they don't know. We got to teach them how to pull their pants up, how to give up a seat for an elder. When they see elders in the community, how to talk to them, how to help. Like these kids have missed a whole generation of information because of substance abuse, because of just the communities that we are in. We have to bring that etiquette. We have to start going back to I keep telling people here, we got to reset. I think sometimes the way we think is we thinking where we need to be and we're not going back to the basics. We had single family homes. We've had drugs. We've had everything that impacted our community. We got to start back at A. We got to start teaching people respect, how to talk, how to walk, how to do things, how to write a job. Because I always hear jobs, and we'll talk about this later, David, but I hear the job things too much, and I'm tired of hearing it. We got to teach people how to keep a job.
That's right.
We'll give them a job, and then 90% of these people lose.
Now you're triggering me because that's right.
You're triggering both of us now, David.
You're absolutely right.
So I mean, it's just those things, and I always tell people I want to see my Black folks with careers, and let's educate them and tell these young people in the community, hey, you at work, you can't be texting and talking on the phone, you can't be on Facebook. Like we just say we give them jobs, we just to get our numbers, we got them a job, but then 60 days, they can't keep the job. So we got to really teach them and how to read their paycheck stubs and just basic stuff that we think people know. We just got to bring it back a notch. And I think sometimes when we bring these people in here, they have great ideas, great intentions, but that's why we're having a failure with the impact. Because we make this assumption. We just got to take a step back, start over, reset from one, and let's start, building these kids up and teach them the basic things, the human things, right? Love each other, support each other, Black man, Black woman. Like let's start back to the basic. We're not each other enemies, and let's uplift, empower them that way, because I think that really works. I want the Black men, what I've been doing and me and Toriano been doing. Every time we see our young Black folks, we hug them and we tell them we love them. We got to make this stuff that we think is corny or some other thing. We got to make it normalized. We got to make it cool. And we need our leaders of the community, especially our elders, to stop being so divisive and be open to change and willing to give these young people some love. I'm just saying. I say it again. We have to stop being so divisive, especially in San Francisco. It's not about the Fillmore, not about Hunters Point, it's about Black San Francisco.
John,
it's about Black San Francisco.
You gonna get trolled again, John.
I know.
Right.
They don't come for me. But this was a great conversation.
Thank you all.
I really appreciate you all giving up your time because, here at both sides of the conversation, we believe that the healing process starts through communication. We know in our Black and brown community, these type of conversations typically don't have because they're taboo, there's stigmas to them. We have so many things, but I think if we start opening up this dialogue and they see phenomenal people like Felicia Jones, David Muhammad, Miss Darius, Miss Brittany up there having these conversations and being vulnerable. As Black men in the community, we have to be vulnerable. And that's why I appreciate our last Tuesday show when his brother came on here and talked about his depression and what he was going through a bad breakup. Because some of this violence happened in our community because they broke up with their girlfriend or their girlfriend was cheating with somebody else. Like, we don't get into that type of stuff, though. That's what we need to be getting into, right? We got to talk about swallowing our pride as men.
I just want to... John Henry, when you said, what's the impact? And, who comes to my mind is my big brother, Director James Bengola. That's the question that he always asks. What is the impact? And we got to start answering that question. What is the impact that we're having on our community? What is the impact that some of your programs are having on our community? And so not only accountability, but also the impact is so important. And, usually I was telling everyone, and John, and I told Director Davis, I usually don't like to do programs, like this. I get invited all the time and I always turn them down. And so, Director asked me and I said, okay, Director. But you know what? I just really want to say I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for, pushing through both sides of the conversation. This forum, this platform is really important, and keep doing what you do, brother.
That's right.
Man, thank you. Thank you.
And
Oh,
sister.
So
Let me not
before,
forget
hold on,
the-
David. David, I know you got to go, but before you go, we always give all the panelists an opportunity to give some parting words to the community, something positive, because we always want to leave on a positive note, because these conversations are very triggering, and sometimes they get us all into trouble. But I'm okay with this conversation being trouble, because I want people to get out there and do the work. But before you go, and I want Felicia, Director Davis, leave some parting words, and then Brittany so eloquently always wraps up our conversation with the call to action. So I'm looking forward to hearing what her call to action. And for my call to action, Black man, we got to step up and stop being so soft and get out here and do the work, because I'm tired of it. And you're right, Collective Impact, phenomenal work that they're doing, Uncle Stank, good brother. We need more Uncle Stanks around here that's willing to give the information and the game to the people and help uplift the young people and bridging that generational gap.
I was gonna let David talk.
Okay, all right.
It's going.
Three of the most important themes that I heard. One being love, right? That really is what is going to do it for us. And then education and economic development, right? That with these are the pieces that the Black community need most, right? Receive love, give love each other first and foremost. And then education is really going to be the piece. Now that's all a long-term investment in economic development. So just want to lift up those pieces in terms of transforming our communities where we don't need an intervention program. Right, we need one right now, but I want the day where our program, we don't need an intervention program. So thank you for having me. Appreciate the conversation and look forward to more.
All right, no problem. Thank you, good brother. We appreciate you, and anything that we could do to help support, please let us know. Send us any information. We'll get it out to the community.
Thank you.
Sister Felicia, give us some positive words to the community before you leave.
Okay, brother. Here it goes. In the words of Cornel West, honey, to the community. In order to save the community, you must serve the community. In order to lead the community, you must love the community. Power to the people.
All right. All power to the people. As I would say here at both sides of the conversation, you can't lead the community if you don't feed the community. And that's with love, information, knowledge, and food. But Director Davis, we so graciously appreciate you giving up your time to come today, because some of these elected officials talk about their allies and they about the community. You giving up your Sunday to come in here to really let the community know, and that's what we need. So when people talk about who ain't, like, she giving up her time to come here to give the community information. So we thank you and your leadership, and we got your back, and we want to make sure that everything that you're doing.
Got your back, Director Dr. Davis.
Coming for them. But the Birkin bag, don't be talking about the Birkin bag. Or she talking about she got to work.
No, he didn't go there.
Don't be up there with the Birkin bag.
Oh my God!
Look! If I ever make that much money, you gonna be the first one I call and say, "Look what I got! Look what I got to have a whole lots of money in the bank to buy one of them."
Right. A Birkin bag, honey.
I had one once, but it was a knock off.
Knock off. It was supposed to be a Birkin bag.
Look, I'm gonna tell you, I didn't even know what a Birkin bag was. And somebody said, "Is that?" But I was like, I don't know. What is that? So, look, way beyond me.
Well, there y'all go. That's asking for impact. Y'all see the community saying this was very impactful. That's the impact. We get the community involved. They love it. It's real and authentic, and that's what they love. They don't want to hear from these other people. They want to hear from you all. But yeah, Director, give any parting words to the community and let them know what you want to give them before you leave.
No, I appreciate you all holding space. I was saying, man, that John Henry, he got three shows a week. He doing this. He really like to talk. I say he come on here.
Yes, he does, Director.
I said it at the beginning, started my career as a teacher, and I just love being in these spaces. I love having the opportunity to engage folks in this. This just made me think about one of my favorite poetry books is by a woman by the name of Eloise Greenfield. And she has the collection of poems is called Honey, I Love. And then it goes through all these different stanzas that talk about things. One says, going down the country where the church folks like to meet. Another one talks about going and sitting next to their mama and, while she's sewing buttons on the coat. But it ends with, I love a lot of things. And honey, let me tell you that I love you too. So just to be in space with each other and to have honest, authentic, real conversations and stuff like this just reminds me of the days of old when folks would be sitting on their porches talking and laughing, or what men have at the barber shop and women have at the hair shop, right? Just to be in space, to have conversation and know that when it's over, we ain't mad at each other. We're not frustrated with each other, that we have had therapy and we have space together. So I celebrate this moment. I celebrate this conversation, and I celebrate the vision to create this space. So thank you all for having us here and letting us be a part of the family.
Yes, no problem. You're always welcome here. Anytime you come back, anything you want to get out, you're always welcome. And I ain't gonna do you like the mayor asked you to sing. Y'all know I've been messing with Cheryl Davis for a long time. I ain't gonna ask you to sing today.
Just for you, John Henry, I'm gonna have I told somebody, I said, I'm gonna learn some songs because the mayor had put me out there 2-3 times. I said, and then John was on something with me, said something. I'm gonna post something today just for you, John. I'm gonna tag you and let you know. I'm gonna post something because usually I don't sing and I don't let people record it. And somebody sent me something of me singing. I said, I'm gonna put it out there just for John. So look for that later.
Yeah. And so, John Henry, may I say something also?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out. I know you did it earlier, but I just would like to close out inviting everyone who's hearing the sound of our voices to please come out Thursday, City Hall, for our Community Appreciation Day. It's going to be from 12 to 2. Just come out, have some food, dance, and let's celebrate each other.
Yes, phenomenal. We're going to be out there, both sides of the conversation. We're going to be out with our people, Mega Black family there. Wealth and Disparities is working together to bless our community with this day of just enjoying ourselves in front of City Hall. But Miss Brittany, go ahead, give us our call to action, because every week you always bring everything back into the center. Let me hear what the call to action is today.
Well, I try. But there was a lot of great things that were said today. Everybody had good points, and even in your closing, everyone had something really good to say, their own special call of actions. But just going ahead and just piggybacking off of what Felicia just said, my call of action to the community is, it's time for us to, get up, start showing up to these town halls, these community discussions. Our organizations start coming up with more effective community engagement strategies so that we can reach these at-risk people. If we're coming forward with all of these great programs, it's important that they reach the people that they're intended to reach. One thing I love about my city is that we're always so innovative. We're the first to do everything. I feel like this past year and a half, with COVID, with the Dream Keepers, we're the first to do everything. And so I think that it's important that our communities, take accountability for what it is that we're trying to do. If we're making national news, if we're, trying to, address the community of violence, trying to address the disparities in our communities, it can't just take us, it takes our community leaders, our organizations, our community members. It takes everyone, a collective effort, a collective impact for us to progress forward. And so with that, I also want to say that listening to what you were saying, Dr. Davis, I'm hearing the importance of continuing the efforts of community healing. We started to see more community healing last year with these events that John Henry hates to talk about. But, when we see my girl Tanish walking around with the sage, and we got our sound bowls out there, and we got all these different, cultural healing aspects that we're bringing back into the community to address the pain, to address the loss, to address the grief, the stress, the anxiety that we all have been feeling. These are things that we need to see more of. Bring back the Black joy into our communities. It's so important. If we're addressing violence, we have to, have joy. We have to, bring love to the table in order for us to, address the hate and the pain and the fear. And lastly, building more of the capacity of our community members. We hear, John, you've been talking this whole show about the need for more leaders, for people to step up, people with these skills, that we need to move these efforts forward. But we also need more capacity building workshops. We also need more leadership training programs that are honing in on people specifically in our community. There's a lot of leadership training programs that you can get to if you're working corporate, if you're working for the city government, you have access to those. but there are the ones where people that are just working on the community, just, grassroots that don't have that same access. So we need that in our communities. And that's pretty much all I have. More Black joy, our community being accountable, standing up, attending these events, these town halls. What was it, the town hall that you guys did the other day? That was so very important. A lot of great information was shared. We just need more people just to show up. So that's my call to action today. So thank you all again, Felicia and Dr. Davis. I really enjoyed, hearing you talk, Felicia. I've seen you many times in the community. I've sat and ate with you before. And so just seeing you in this capacity is just like, just loving it all. So yeah, thank you.
Thank Director Dr. Davis for it, because, like I said, I just do the work. And, John Henry had asked me, months ago, Felicia, come on. And I'm like, no, thank you. But, sometimes you just have to do things that are uncomfortable to you in order to continue the path and the work that we're want to achieve.
Yeah, it's important. And Dr. Davis, this is my first time engaging with you like this, and I'm just like so motivated. Like I hear so much about you and how you inspire so many people. But
yes,
this is
and
I'm like taking notes. I'm about to read poems, all kinds of stuff. Like I'm just like, dang, you the truth.
He is brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, when I tell y'all she's a genius, and y'all think I just be trying to, brown nose. They be trying to hear you brown nose and decorator. I said, listen, man, it's one thing about brilliant. I understand talent, and I understand people who have the gift of God. And that sister right here, Director Davis, she has a gift. And again, she's utilizing her gift to bless others. And as community, we need to do our job to show up and support this leadership that we have in our communities. Felicia, I've said it so many times. We got to let our personal issues go, work together. We have some great leaders here. We might not agree with everything that they do, but they are Black folks, and we got to get back to us. You be the change. The ask for me is Black men, step up. We be the change. Community, let's be the change. Organization, dream keepers, let's show out. Let's show out for Director Davis and for the mayor and for Shaman. Come on, let's come out here and let the community know where you at, what you doing. Let's not hide now. This is not a time to hide. Organizations, there's no more rainy day reserve fund. The rainy day is now. We need the resources to come to the people. We got to bless the people. I want to say thank you to Collective Impact. Uncle Stank, for being that leader, being that community person that has that humility, that compassion. Brother DJ at YCD, all these organizations are working together. Let's go out here and let's impact the people. Our people are in a crisis right now on many different levels. We don't have time for the personal issues, and she didn't speak to me last time she was in me, so I don't want to work with her. This is the time for us to really stand up, have our voices heard, and really move Black San Francisco forward. All the divisiveness, you from here, I'm from there, I don't know you. Let's stop it. Let's embrace each other with love. When it comes to this mental health thing, all our mental health service providers, please get the resources to the community. Open up your space. We need help right now. People are grieving. We need grief counselors in our community as people are being killed and murdered on these streets and COVID. We need those services. If you have the funding, you have the support, or you have that bandwidth, let's make sure that we help our people out. This is so important. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's show. We'll see you all this Tuesday as we'll have another Hidden Gem segment where we will continue to highlight and uplift our Black and brown businesses, as well as those community leaders like you see here today, Miss Felicia Jones and Director Davis and Brittany, that are doing things to positively impact our community. We need our community to know who they are, see their face, so that we can support them and uplift them and patronize those Black businesses. So because we know our Black businesses are hurting and we need our dollars to be spent within us. So thank you all for tuning in today. This was a great conversation. We're going to have to probably have a part 3 because David ran away when I wanted to get on some stuff that he triggered me on. I've been triggered all day, but it was all for the good. I just thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you, Director Davis. Thank you, Felicia. You all have a blessed evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye-bye. See you, Director.